Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ankita Jain, periodontist and implantologist. Today, before discussing the next topic, I would like to introduce to the channel, and because many of the subscribers have recently joined, so just I want to give a brief about this channel that I share my notes in the form of flowcharts and diagrams and tables and line diagrams here, and these notes are basically uh, taken from the standard textbooks and relevant journals which cover all the latest concepts of a particular topic with the authentic references. Moreover, I teach them and frame them in the most simplest way possible. So be on the channel, it will keep you updated about the topics which are uploaded onto the channel. Now, today under periodontal classification series, we will be discussing the gingival recession classifications right from the first to the latest one. And also under this series, we have already covered gingival enlargement classifications and scorings, as well as the classifications of furcation involvement. The link will be given in the description box of both the classifications. Today we will be covering the gingival recession classifications. Now, the contents will be some introduction, classifications, and references will be given to you to read. Introduction, if we see, gingival recession is defined as the displacement of marginal gingiva apical to the CEJ. So you have to remember here major word marginal gingiva, the margins of gingiva apical to the CEJ. It was given by AAP in 1992. The term marginal tissue recession is considered to be more accurate than gingival recession. Okay, gingival recession means whole of the gingiva, which includes marginal gingiva, attached gingiva. But here, the gingival recession basically refers to the marginal tissue recession or the recession of marginal gingiva. So this terminology is very important. Then marginal tissue recession is defined as the displacement of the soft tissue margin apical to the CEJ. Again, it was revised in 1996 by AAP, and the gingival recession was replaced by the word marginal tissue recession. Next, we come on to the types of classifications. So there are around 13 types of classifications are given till date for the gingival recession. Today we will be covering up to the Smith's index of recession, means from Sullivan and Atkins to Smith's index of recession. That means 7 types will cover in this part, and from Norland and Tarnow to Nagappa et al. We will be covering in the next part. So let's begin with first is given by Sullivans and Atkins in 1968. They have just considered the mandibular incisors for the recession. Okay, and so they have grossly divided the recession into shallow and deep. Shallow means when the length of the recession is less, deep when it is more. Now again they have divided shallow into narrow and wide and deep into narrow and wide. Both the shallow and deep into narrow and wide. So if the recession is shallow and narrow, then it becomes shallow narrow. Here it becomes shallow wide. Here it becomes deep narrow. Here it becomes deep wide. It is the classification. And it is very vague classification. They have just considered mandibular incisors and no other teeth were considered according to their classification. So limitation, we have already discussed that they have considered only mandibular incisors. And second, there will be inter-examiner variability. Means it's a very vague classification. So every examiner will have different kind of categorization according to this classification. At different point of time, the same examiner can classify the recession into different types. And if two examiners are given the same recession, then they can also classify them differently. So that's what was the limitation of Sullivan and Atkins. Next was given by Mlinick et al. In 1973. They reported their results of root coverage with mucosal grafts. Okay, so according to the root coverage, they have classified the recession. They have also given shallow narrow, in which if the cleft is less than 3 mm in the dimension and in both the dimensions, that is horizontal and vertical, and deep wide defect when the recession is greater than 3 mm in both the dimensions. Here also they have not specified any landmark for the horizontal measurement, as well as the variable measurements may represent variable distances. So it is also a vague classification. Next was given by Liu and Salt in 1980. They have just given visual recession, hidden recession. Visual recession is measured from the CEJ to the soft tissue margin, and hidden recession is the loss of attachment within the pocket that is apical to the tissue margin. Next was given by Bangui et al. In 1983. They have classified the recession according to the coverage prognosis. That means if a particular type of recession is having a poor prognosis, then it has to be U type. If it has fair prognosis, then it has to be V type. If it has good prognosis, then it has to be I type. So you can see here U type, V type, I type, like this. Okay, so they have given according to the prognosis of the coverage of particular recession. Next, this is the most widely used classification till date, which was given by Miller in 1985, though it has got several limitations also. We will talk about the limitations in the later part of this video. But first we will see what is actually this classification about. First of all, it is based on the morphological evaluation of the injured periodontal tissue, okay, and it predicts the final amount of root coverage following the free gingival graft procedure. Just remember that Miller has considered only one technique, that is FGG, only one graft, only one type of graft rather. Okay, there are several kind of techniques, several kind of grafts are also there which are nowadays used, but they have considered the prognosis of the root coverage on the basis of just FGG procedure. Now, landmarks which they have used are mucogingival junction, interdental periodontal attachment loss, that means the loss of bone and the soft tissues between the teeth, and the malpositioning of the teeth in case of class 3 and class 4 recession. Now let's see, class 1 Miller's classification represents the recession that does not extend to the mucogingival junction, okay, and there would be complete root coverage in this case after FGG, and 100% success rate is there for the surgery. Okay, so this is the class 1, Miller's class 1. Class 2 is basically recession that extends to or beyond the mucogingival junction with no periodontal attachment loss. Okay, so here there is no periodontal attachment loss, means if you see interdental tissue, that is tissue between lateral and central, and here lateral and central, so there is no loss of tissue and the bone in the interdental area, but the recession is there which is extending up to the mucogingival junction. So that is what comes under class 2 recession. Here also they have claimed that with FGG complete root coverage is achievable and 100% success rate is there. Next is Miller's class 3, which represents that recession extends to or beyond the mucogingival junction with periodontal attachment loss in the interdental area or malpositioning of the teeth. Now, what is the difference between then class 2 and class 3? Class 2 is having the recession that extends to or beyond the mucogingival junction but without periodontal attachment loss. And in class 3, it is similar, the gingival margin criteria is similar, that is it extends to or beyond the mucogingival junction. But the difference is that it has got periodontal attachment loss in the interdental area, or second criteria is malpositioning of the tooth. Now here they have claimed that only partial root coverage is possible, and that root coverage can only be possible up to the height of the interproximal tissue. Okay, and 50 to 70% success rate is there for this surgery. Class 4 is what? Recession that extends to or beyond the mucogingival junction. This criteria is similar to that of class 3, class 2, with severe bone loss or soft tissue loss in the interdental area. The difference between class 3 and class 4 is only about the severity. That means that is in class 3, there is loss of periodontal attachment in the interdental area, and in class 4, there is severe loss of attachment in the interdental area. And there would be severe malpositioning of the teeth. So the only difference between class 3 and class 4 is of severity. Okay. Now here the root coverage is unpredictable and requires adjunctive treatment like orthodontics in order to correct the malpositioned tooth. And the success rate of such surgeries are just less than 10%. So here you can see in the picture that this is class 3, where interdental tissue loss is there and the gingival margin is also extending up to the mucogingival junction. And here see, there is gingival margin extending to the mucogingival junction, and there is malpositioning of the tooth, severe malpositioning of the tooth. It is completely out of the arch. That's why it is categorized in class 4. In 1985, Miller has given his classification. In 2011, Pini-Prato has listed several limitations of this classification. Now we'll see one by one. So here we will see first limitation is that the reference point given by Miller is mucogingival junction. Now we all know that it's very difficult to actually identify the mucogingival junction. Secondly, he has not mentioned any of the techniques which should be used to identify the mucogingival junction, like ink method or probe method. So which method should be used in order to identify it? This has been not mentioned in the original article of Miller. This is one of the limitation. Second is amount and characteristic of bone loss. So we have seen that in class 3, Miller has mentioned that there is loss of interdental periodontal attachment. And in the class 4, they have mentioned that it's severe loss of attachment. So actually, they have not specified any kind of severity and the characteristic of bone loss or the amount of bone loss, so that we can distinguish between class 3 and class 4. So it is very difficult to keep a particular recession either in class 3 or in class 4. Third limitation is a tooth with gingival recession always presents a certain amount of keratinized tissue. Keratinized tissue basically involves free gingiva as well as attached gingiva. So it's not possible that free gingiva can go beyond the mucogingival junction. There will be always some amount of keratinized tissue present in the form of free gingiva. And the marginal tissue recession cannot extend to or beyond the MGJ. Therefore, class 2 can never exist, and class 1 and class 2 would represent a single category. Fourth limitation, now there is a confusion. For example, we can see in this figure that if we see the gingival margin, then according to gingival margin, this recession seems to be class 1. But if we see interdental bone loss, here also, then interdental bone loss gives us that it should be categorized either into class 3 or either into class 4. It is a confusion that where such recessions should be kept. Next we come on to the fifth limitation. Miller's classification doesn't specify facial or lingual involvement of marginal tissue. So they haven't given us the aspect where this classification should be applied. They have just given us the gingival recession margin extending to mucogingival junction or beyond it. So these are the landmarks, but on which aspect this classification can be used, it is not specified. Recession of interdental papilla cannot be alone classified on the basis of Miller, because there is no mention about such recessions in which only interdental papilla is recessed and gingival margin is not recessed. So it requires an additional classification system in such cases. Seventh limitation is difficult of the applicability of Miller's criteria on the palatal aspect. Yes, because on the palatal aspect there is no mucogingival junction present. So we cannot apply this classification there. Eighth is Miller's classification estimates the prognosis of root coverage. Okay, they have said that 100% root coverage can be obtained in class 1 and class 2, partial in case of class 3, and no root coverage in class 4. But practically it is not so. And in fact, it is interesting that same Miller and Binkley, the authors who have given the classification, they have reported a case in which 100% of root coverage was obtained in case of class 4 recession by coronally positioning a free gingival graft. It was also very surprising to notice that 1 year post-operative root coverage was slightly less than 100% on the facial aspect of the tooth. So Miller himself has actually contraindicated his own classification. Ninth limitation is class 3 and class 4 considers tooth malposition as an alternative criteria to bone or soft tissue loss. But it is unclear that what degree of malposition, what should be the severity of malpositioning of the teeth so that they can be categorized either in class 3 or class 4. 10th is the difference between class 3 and class 4 is basically on the position of the gingival margin of the two adjacent teeth. So the author says the probe should be placed horizontally on the imaginary line connecting the tissue level on the mid facial of two teeth on either side of the teeth or teeth exhibiting recession. So what about those cases in which basically there is missing teeth adjacent to recession? Okay, so there is no interdental tissue, no interdental bone, then how can we classify that recession which is present adjacent to the missing teeth? So that is again a question in Miller's classification. The last one is no consideration has been made in regards to hard tissue defects, okay, like non-carious cervical lesions. For example, here that we cannot identify where is the position of CJ due to the presence of effraction or non-carious cervical lesion. So in such cases, we cannot apply Miller's classification. Now, in order to overcome the Miller's classification's limitation, Mahajan has given some kind of modification which should be done in this classification. The modifications suggested by the Mahajan included the extent of gingival recession defect in relation to mucogingival junction should be separated from the criteria of bone and soft tissue loss. Okay, objective criteria should be included to differentiate between the severity of bone loss and soft tissue loss in class 3 and class 4. Prognosis assessment should include the profile of gingiva. Profile means biotype of gingiva, that is thickness of gingiva should be considered in determining the prognosis of a gingival recession coverage. So according to them, they have given these modifications and given a new kind of classification, that is class 1 should be such that GRD, gingival recession defect, should not extend to the mucogingival junction. So they have not considered, they have separated the mucogingival junction and the interdental periodontal attachment loss. In class 2, all those recessions which are extending to the mucogingival junction and beyond should be considered. And in class 3, gingival recession defect with bone or soft tissue loss in the interdental area up to 1/3 of the root surface or malpositioning of the teeth. If the interdental soft tissue loss is up to the cervical 1/3 of the root surface, then it should be considered in class 3. And class 4, GRD with severe bone loss or soft tissue loss in the interdental area greater than cervical 1/3 of the root surface or severe malpositioning of the teeth. They have considered mucogingival junction only in class 1 and class 2 and interdental bone loss and tissue loss and malpositioning in class 3 and class 4. Now the second part of this classification included the prognosis, in which they have considered the gingival biotype or gingival profile in order to determine the prognosis. So best prognosis will be in the class 1 and class 2 with thick gingival biotype. Good in class 1 and class 2 with thin gingival biotype. Fair in class 3 with thick gingival profile, and poor in class 3 and class 4 with thin gingival profile. That means the gingival recession which are having thick gingiva will have better prognosis. But still in this modification also there were some limitations, like it cannot accommodate all the clinical conditions. For example, the one which we have discussed, in which there was a dilemma between class 1, class 3 and class 4, where to classify those recessions. The same case cannot be classified according to the classification which was modified by Mahajan also. Next classification was given by Smith, Index of Recession, in 1997. They proposed the classification basically to assess both vertical and the horizontal aspect of the defect. Their classification was basically observational and descriptive. That means they have tried to measure the recession and then they have classified accordingly. Next is denoting severity. Since they have measured the recession, so we are more clear with the severity of particular recession. Provide basis for evaluating treatment modalities and experimental studies. Okay, so let's see what is this classification about. So as we know that Smith has considered both vertical and horizontal aspect of the defect. So first of all, we will start with the horizontal component. In 0 score, there is no clinical evidence of root exposure. Now, the score of 1 is given in two conditions. First of all, when there is no clinical evidence of root exposure, but there is subjective awareness of dentinal hypersensitivity to the patient. When we will give a 1-second air blast to the tooth, and if the patient complains of hypersensitivity, then the score of 1 is given. This is the first condition. And the score of 1 can also be given in that condition in which there is detectable exposure of CJ up to 10%. For example, if this is the tooth and this is its CJ somewhere here. So if 10% of CJ is exposed and we can detect it clinically, then also the score of 1 will be given. Similarly, score 2, when the exposure of CJ is more than 10% but less than 25%. Score of 3, when it is more than 25% but not exceeding the 50%. Score 4, when the exposure of CJ is greater than 50% but not exceeding 75%. Score 5, when it is more than 75% of the MMMD distance up to 100%. This is about the horizontal component of the defect on the basis of the CJ exposure from mesial to distal direction. Second is the vertical component. Now the vertical component, that means the distance between the CJ and the gingival margin. So 0 is given when there is no evidence of root exposure. 1 is given again similarly to 0, that means clinically you can't see the recession, but if you give a blast of air and the person complains of dentinal hypersensitivity, then the score of 1 will be given. Or if there is detectable exposure of CJ in the vertical direction not extending more than 1 mm. 2 to 8 score is given accordingly. If there is distance of 2 mm between the gingival margin and the CJ, then score of 2 will be given. If it is 3, then score of 3 will be given. If there is 4 mm distance between the CJ and the gingival margin, then score of 4 will be given. So accordingly, with each mm, the score will be increasing. Now it is up to the 8 mm. The score of 9 is given in all those cases where the root exposure is greater than 8 mm from the CJ to the base of the soft tissue defect. So there is a particular pattern to write the Smith's classification. Now we will see, after measuring the horizontal component and the vertical component, how we have to write this classification. So basically, first of all, you have to write the site of the root exposure. That is, either it is facial or palatal or lingual. So in this case, we have measured the recession on the facial aspect. So we will write facial. Next is horizontal. We will write the measurement of horizontal defect, that is 5 mm. So we will write 5. Vertical component is 2 mm. Okay, so basically index recession which is proposed, it consists of two digits, horizontal and vertical, and these two digits are separated by dash. Lastly, we also put a asterisk if mucogingival junction is involved. If it is not involved, then we won't write it. So in this case, since mucogingival junction is not involved, so this asterisk is not marked in the answer. So that is how we represent the Smith's classification. Now there were also certain limitations related to this classification, like separate values can be assigned for multi-rooted teeth. If it is molar, then there will be different tooth and there will be different kind of index of recession for that particular tooth, which becomes more complex. It leads to the overestimation of the condition as it utilizes the subjective awareness of sensitivity. There are different perception by different individual. So on the basis of hypersensitivity, it is difficult to categorize the recession. Difficult to detect the midpoints of the mesial and distal surfaces. So basically they have included mesial midpoint and the distal midpoint in order to classify the horizontal component. So it is difficult to detect those midpoints and measure the CJ exposure according to this classification. These are the references from which these 7 classifications were taken, and their limitations were also taken from these references. Next 6 classifications will be covered in the next part of the video, and on this channel we have also mentioned 21 types of classifications of furcation involvement. You can get the link in the description box, and also there is a video in which 8 types of gingival enlargement scorings were given. So I hope you have got the classifications which we have covered. If you have got any kind of queries or doubts related to the classifications, kindly mail me on my mail ID, or you can leave your suggestions in the comment section. You can also suggest me the topics. The lineup topics are GCF, concepts of GCF, plaque hypothesis, and bone grafts. So I'll try to make the videos on those particular topics as soon as possible after finishing this series of periodontal classifications. And thank you so much for a lot of support onto the channel. I'll keep updating the latest concepts related to the topics. Thank you.